working?
All right, you guys are live, but Jared's just gonna check the stream and make
Okay.
sure that it, sometimes it's hard to really, so I'll give you that.
Okay.
Give me the word.
Okay, where's October?
Okay.
Again, I can't find it. Can't figure this out. What is it? Let's see. Any reason to do it? Well, guess I'll download it again. Don't get this. Why is this weird? And here it is.
Dina, we're good.
Okay. So we'll call a meeting of the Fountain Hills Unified School District Governing Board meeting for October 4th, 2023 to order. First item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Do I hear a motion?
I move we approve the agenda.
I second.
Motion is made and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Stand for the pledge. Tyler, would you do it again?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
For those wondering why I've got the gavel here today, Jill is on vacation, and since I'm the vice chair, I'm stuck with this job, so. It's been a while. First, the next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes for September 20th, 2023. The information is on pages 5 through 10.
I move we approve the minutes for September 20th, 2023.
I second.
Motion's been made and seconded.
Is that, Libby, I'm sorry.
I second.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you.
please.
Good?
Yep, I'm good, thank you.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Next item is information and the summary of current events from our superintendent, Dr. J.
Thank you, Vice President Dana Sarr. Appreciate you being here tonight, members of the board and guests. Just a few comments tonight. First of all, I want to give a shout out for our homecoming parade. I was very excited to see it back at the Avenue of the Fountain. So thank you to everyone who was a part of that. And I know we had a lot of students and staff involved in making it happen. I thought this was a really nice picture with the sunset in the background and our police leading the way with all the crowd. And it was just a really, really great night. I know the businesses appreciate having it down there. I know the community appreciates having it down there. And it was just really a fun night. And Frank made it 2/3 of the way and called for an Uber, but he did good. And it was just great. So thank you I want to personally thank Evelyn Wynn. I gave her that task a while back, and she ran with it. She did a great job. And then all the parents, students, and staff that helped. This is the first step. We're going to make it better next year and keep making it better each year. So we had a lot of feedback on what worked well, where we can continue to grow, and but I was really happy with it. So very proud of that. Second thing, a couple of us went down to Vail School District for the super conference last week. And we actually have one in the crowd here. So But we took a few teachers down there. Dr. Wheeldryer went down there, brought her two, those are her two math teachers there, which, you want to wave and say hi, Mrs. Miller? Okay, good. But they went down, and it was really great to see. This is at Micah Mountain. This is their new high school in Vail. Gorgeous, just absolutely beautiful campus. It was really good. So we had, you could see us in there, and the guy in the far right is Brent Edwards. He's one of the Vail people. He was very excited to be part of Fountain Hills that day, so he jumped in with us for the picture. But it was great. There were 5 sessions, 5 learning sessions, and it was just really good, taught by other teachers from around, partners, and from Vail. Some of their administrators did trainings. I believe they said 700 people showed up. Was my total, was that about right? I think it was about 700, about 60 different districts that came, and it's just really nice, really well taken care of, and it was a good night. So, a good day, actually, so I appreciate that. We have conferences going on right now. So this week we have our pre-K through 8th grade conferences, and we're going to wrap it up. We'll be on October break next week. One of the things we changed in the schedule is that we will have the Monday after break is students do not have school. So you get an extra day off, and that is a teacher work day now. So the teachers have the entire day to plan, to work, and prepare. And we do that after now October, winter, and spring break, so that's really nice. They made up those days at the beginning of the year. That's why we started 3 days earlier, so we could get that done. So students, you have 6 days off coming up, so enjoy that, all right? We have some books that are going to be on display here soon from the literary committee that are recommending they'll be on display at the district office. Anyone wants to come and look at those, and then they'll come back to the board for discussion. And then lastly, I just want to give an update on our audit. So we've had some discussion in the community about the audit. And one of the things I've heard is that we have not submitted our plan. And that's not true. It was submitted a while back. It came to the board for you guys to review. But this is directly from the Auditor General. So as we discussed with you, since the district has submitted its completed corrective action plan, indicating the steps taken to substantially correct its deficiencies, representatives from our office will conduct a review of the district's internal controls beginning October 16th. So we are now in the phase of, we moved on. Like, we've already done all our work, and now it's time for them to come in and test it, and then from there, we'll continue to work with them. So I just want to give an update on that, because I've heard that the plan had not been submitted. So I just want to make sure that that was clear. With that, I'll conclude my comments.
Thank you. Next would be the governing board members. So I'll start with my neighbor here.
All right. Very good. The homecoming parade was a lot of fun. I can see where next year it should grow, and we decided as a board that we'll be buying candy. We felt really guilty not throwing something to everybody that was there. I attended the Little Falcons ice cream social, and George was there taking pictures. It was adorable. It was a lot of fun. A lot of the little kids went straight for the ice cream, handed it to their mothers, and then just started playing. They didn't even eat the ice cream afterwards. And I've attended a couple more coffees with Mr. Wilkinson and with Kane yesterday.
I have nothing to report.
Moving on down the line.
I'm going to share a few things. I'm going to actually go back before the last board meeting too, because I did want to share that I was able to attend a Beyond Textbook presentation put on by Jessica Kane, and I was so impressed with the work that she put into the presentation and into just the effort in hosting it. She had notepads and pens for us to write down questions as she did her presentation, and it was very well done. I appreciate her effort there, and it definitely gave me a better view of the system. I also loved the homecoming parade. I was really grateful we were able to move it to Avenue of the Fountains. In that picture, you can see a few people standing out on their balconies. I loved that. Even if they didn't know about it ahead of time, I'm sure people, when they saw something was going on, they came to watch, and that's great. That's what we need to grow. I went to a few of the coffees, and then I also helped out with the book fair at McDowell Mountain Elementary. It was a lot of fun. And then I also went to the first town hall, which I really appreciate you making the effort to create FaceTime for our community members, especially in regards to something that a lot of them have questions about. Thank you.
Okay,
I'm gonna add some. I forgot to mention that, I did go to the town halls, and anyway, just forgot what it was I was going to mention. Never mind, we'll talk about it later.
I know the feeling. So I was at the homecoming day, homecoming parade as well. I was in the audience with some new members of the community who were just blown away. They live in the same complex, so they've been on the avenue many times, but they thought this was awesome. And so your comments, the fact that you could look up into all those balconies and they were excited. Some had their blue shirts on and stuff like that, which was cool. So good job, and I'm glad you commended the people that put that on, because that is a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
I just remember what it was. It was the football game that, I went to the homecoming one, and I went to this past week, which was adorable, because they had the little kids there. It was the little girls with the poms, and there were over 30 girls there dancing. They were having so much fun, and then the boys were out there, and Mr. Wilkerson did kick those field goals, even though his shoe went with it, but it was great. It was really a lot of fun.
And last thing for me, I am on fall break as we speak here. And our faculty goes back on the following Monday from next week, and students don't have to, so that's becoming, and just to let you know, most of the East Valley schools will go into this more balanced calendar next year. Start that process now.
And I do have a EVIT student sleeping in this week, so he's very pleased with that schedule, so. And I do need to get, Lillian, you're gonna put me in a bad spot here, because Kevin is probably, gonna watch this and say I didn't say anything about his field goal. So, when I found out that he had the school record in Indiana for his school of a 47-yard field goal, I immediately told him, you're kicking at halftime, and he accepted it. And when he made it, the kids were really excited, and thank you to the Booster Club for providing the ice cream sandwiches and the footballs that went with it. So apologize to Mr. Wilkinson if you're watching. I should have been on top of that.
All right, so we'll move on to reports, and the first one is Stugel. Come forward.
Hello, everyone.
I'm going to turn on the mic.
It should be on.
Testing.
Yep.
Yes.
You're
So,
good.
all faces, I don't know, okay. So, student government were here, so homecoming and powder puff went really good. The powder puff was a lot smoother than we did last year, so it went a lot quicker. There's a lot of little things messed up last year, but we're looking for better next year.
Why don't you introduce yourself?
Oh,
Oh,
well,
yeah.
I'm Adam Over.
And what year? We'll keep going.
Sophomore.
Okay, all right,
I'm Ryan Miller. I'm also a sophomore.
I'm Alex Brownstein. I'm also a sophomore.
awesome. Thanks to the sophomore class for being
Very
here
good.
tonight. Any questions for our young students?
Do you have
Do you
something
have
more
more
to
to
add?
report?
In regards to the parade, it went pretty smooth, but something we could have done a little better on our end was social media advertisement to the students.
Excellent, yeah, good job.
Very good.
The band was, everybody mentioned, I didn't know we had a band, so it's good to see.
It's the first time in a long time we've seen that. We had a march at the game, which was special for me. I worked hard to get Jan here, and he's done a great job. And I think you guys ran the powder puff very well. I came to the games. All is well when the seniors win,
Yeah,
so,
that's right.
so that worked out good. But it was fun, so good job. Keep coming up with great ideas, and if you have any questions, reach out to us, okay?
Great job.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next in reports, we have the bond and override report for fiscal year 2023. It's on pages 12 through 20 of your stuff tonight. Dr. Day, is you turning it over to somebody else, I see?
Yes. Yes, we are, Vice President Saar, members of the board, yes. Tyler Moore is here tonight. He's one of our consultants that has been working with us since I started here, and he's going to present a couple of different presentations tonight to give you guys an update on where we are with our financial reports.
Dr. J, Vice President Sarr, members of the board, Dr. J. I actually did this report last year, so it's been a full year with Mountain Hill. So it's nice. I had the template ready for this report. So tonight I'm updating you on this first presentation on the bond and override report. So this report is required for districts who have a override, M&O or capital, and or a bond. So it's required for districts to report out how they expended those expenditures for those increases in budget pursuant to there's an ARS section 1540-81 and 491 for bonds. So tonight I'll report out how the district expended the M&O override and the remaining 2013 bond authorization. So first up, the M&O override. This M&O override was passed by voters in 2021. It was a 15% maintenance and operations override. It increased programs currently serving the district and students. The main bullet points here from the voter pamphlet were maintain all-day kindergarten. For the board or public, if you don't know, the state only funds half day, and so that provides funding for the other half of the day for those students who elect full day. Provides teacher salary compensation increases, provides professional development, hires additional staff for reading literacy support, financially rewards staff for outstanding performances, and enables the district to maintain its outstanding award-winning programs. So diving into the numbers for fiscal year 23, that override totaled 15% of the M&O budget was $1.2 million. How that was expended, so that's a weighted add-on. There's not a separate category when that comes into the budget. So that just comes into the budget as additional operational dollars. It's not noted separately. It's not separated out on the revenue. You'll see it separated out on your property tax bill, but when it comes into the district, that's just an additional add-on. That additional add-on, again, was $1.2 million. That breakdown is roughly how this pie chart equates. 40% was used for teacher salary compensation increases. As we recall, the district did a 1% increase, but did do some increases towards longevity and honoring some of your teachers with more years of experience. All-day kindergarten, 23%, maintaining programs, 14%, as well as staffing for literacy support, 14%. Financial reward staff, 5%, and professional development, 4%. Moving on towards the voter-approved bond. As you know, the bond has been a topic of conversation lately. I'm going to talk about the voter-approved bond that was just completely expended as of fiscal year 23. That was approved in 2013. It was an $8 million bond. It was approved for the following categories: safety and security, renovations, improvements for existing buildings, site and athletic facility improvements, pupil transportation, and administrative safety and security updates to building renovations. So that is fully expended. In the voter pamphlet, there's two categories, 2 bullet points the district had to maintain. Those 2 bullet points were the safety and security, building renovations lumped into one, and then pupil transportation, which is statutorily required to be broken out separately. So this is basically the pie chart for how that was spent. So 90% was used on that first bullet there, with 9% being utilized for a few of the buses purchased from that bond. The expenditures in FY23, as noted last year, were utilized for the building consolidation. Those expenditures totaled $116,000, so it wasn't a large amount remaining in the bond fund, but that's what those funds were used for. So those included some of the gate renovations and additions, as well as moving service, architectural services. And looking forward, as I said, this bond is fully expended. And then I think everybody in the room knows the district is going out for a bond on the November ballot. I'm not going to dive into this, but this is the factual sheet that's up on the website going over the bond proposal. It includes a $25 million spending plan, and all that information can be found on the website. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
So I have a lot of questions tonight, so
So do I.
bear with me.
I have more than you.
I don't know. So you said the M&O override was voted on in 2021. When does that end
Yeah,
for
so,
our district?
so how that works, it goes into effect the subsequent fiscal year. So that would have started its time frame, fiscal 22. So we, going into 24, we're in year 2. M&O overrides are fully funded. It's a 7-year authorization, but fully funded for 5 years. So that will take you, let's see if I can do my math, till fiscal year 27. Then it starts a phase down, so year 6. You start phasing down, so you actually get funded 66% of that, 15% of the override. So if you take the, for example, you take the 1.2 million, if you take 66% of that, that would be the amount the district would get, pending they don't approve a continuation on year 6. And then in year 7, it's 33%. So if you take 33% of that 1.2 million, that would be the year 7 M&O override. Again, pending the district doesn't approve a continuation. And then year 8, that would be fully exhausted. And again, pending any continuation or additional election, that 1.2 million would be not in the budget anymore. So
Correct. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. If we can go back to the summary of voter-approved bond and the expenditure in fiscal year 23. I just am looking for some clarification. On the district website, it shows that our remaining balance of that bond was $114,708.43. But we expended, according to here, $116,877. So what happens with that extra above what was left in the bond, or why do those two numbers not match?
I'll have to look into that. I wasn't aware of that number on the website, so.
It's from when Rob Allen came in and
Okay.
ran the numbers at the time. So
Yeah.
that's where he left it.
Because I presented this 116 at last year's update of when I did this presentation. So, and that's, you can look at the documents, that's where I presented that number too. So I'll have to make sure that website's updated and work with Dr. J on getting that updated, so.
Okay.
Can I ask a quick question, Gordon? Was this pie chart matched up with that list of projects that Dr. Allen went over to?
This pie
Because
chart,
it correlates with that, correct?
and then I correlated this pie chart directly with the voter pamphlet. And if you look at the voter pamphlet in 2030, there's 2 bullets in which the funds are to be expended by. I can work with Dr. J and Alicia to create like a better like representation of like the projects that were expended and get like a history of the 2013 bond, because I know that that has been a topic of conversation, like what projects were in there. We've talked about them, but like really get a clear on the website what that was expended for, and list those projects out clearly. So,
Thank you.
as you know, I was not here, and so it's hard to have some contacts when looking at a spreadsheet versus actually being on site and looking at that. So it does take a little time to confirm like those expenditures took place and like going back and researching that. So.
Okay. And then if we can look at the 25 million proposed spending plan. I appreciate it finally making its way to the board. I was disappointed to see it maybe out in the community before we had it as board members. So I guess my question is, who helped find these priorities and designate amounts to these specific funds?
So this was in consultation with Dr. J, John Flynn, the Gordian report, a number of community members, and honestly some board members provided some context too. So this was a culmination of all that, but ultimately Dr. J kind of really put these initiatives in place, and I helped him assign some dollar figures to those.
So when you mention board members, can you be specific as to which board members?
Not me.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we received.
We've had discussions, for 40 years on some of this stuff.
Yeah.
If I can jump in, this is something that will, in the pamphlet or not? We obviously haven't had a chance to read the pamphlet.
These details would not be in the pamphlet.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
So, and we're not locked into any of this? We're only locked into what's in the pamphlet. So every one of those items and others, at some point, come back to the board for final approval for spending any money.
Absolutely.
So this is kind of a good example of how the 25 million could be spent over a course of 10 or 15 years.
10 years.
Is it 10
10-year
years?
authorization.
I thought we had more time to actually spend it.
10-year authorization once.
So I might be around, who knows? But I just want to make sure everybody knows that these are not locked in. They're just ballpark estimates based on the discussions we've had on the needs of the district. Sorry, go ahead.
That was my last question, so thank
I
you.
just had one question with this. Some of these things, shouldn't there be money allocated in the budget for upgrades? I mean, because there's money in the budget for maintenance and keeping them operating, and wouldn't that include upgrades when it comes to things like technology or like roofing and things like that?
Yeah, and we've done a lot of work in the year on our buildings. I mean, we talked about beautification of buildings. In 1 year, you can see when you walk them, with the exception of the high school, which is starting next week, and even the high school had a lot of beautification when I was principal there. So, you know, when I walked in, the hallways were completely just white walls. There was nothing there. And so we've added student work, murals, you know, colleges, lots of different things. And so we have done a lot of beautification work. We've done a lot to create spaces for our teachers that they expressed that they wanted updated. We've done some work. We are going to be doing some roof work this year at McDowell Mountain. We've done some fire protection work. We've done some school safety work. So we've done some work in a lot of those areas, some LED lighting. We can break down for you what we've done, and a lot of it's through the consolidation effort, but some of it's been beyond that. And yes, I mean, I can break that down for you. We have been doing some of that work on the side throughout the last year that I've been here. I do believe that there's been a large scale change of how our buildings look and how they feel since the year in the previous year. So yeah.
If I may add to, and you'll see a little more in the next presentation when you look at it in a financial report, but your capital budget is really being strained by the age of your buildings and the quality of buildings. So some of these initiatives are not typical annual maintenance obligations that you would fund from your capital budget. Some of these are extras, which Dr. Day has talked about multiple times, of creating incentives for students to attend your school and keep students here. But your maintenance budget is being consistently strained as the age of your buildings grow older and the quality, the cost of living and cost of supplies and construction items increase. Your budget is not increasing at the same rate. And so I'll cover a little bit more on the AFR, but that is my 2 cents on that.
I'll give 2 more questions to go with that. Because I do agree that older buildings can cause, create a strain, but then when we find 600,000 plus closer to 700,000 for the library project, and then we're asking for a loan to do the, buildings, make sure our buildings are nice, or to me, I have an issue with that. And then also we were told that there was budgeted funds for the cameras that we were looking at, and I believe the quote that we were going to move on was around 200,000, but the overall budget for the entire system was closer to 800,000. Were we saying that we had that budget with this bond amount, or do we have that either way?
Yeah, so it depends on, when the first quote came in, I mean, that's redoing everything. That's like, going above and way, 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 way beyond what is needed. We went back and we asked them for a more specific scope. We had multiple bids come in around the 250 mark. But then we went for a grant, and we're going to find out in the next couple of weeks if we got it.
The last I talked to the gentleman,
Okay. So pretty soon, that's a $500,000 grant, so we wanted to see if we are awarded that. If we are, then that will pay for those cameras, and that will pay for some security updates. So, yeah, so we do have money set aside if we want to move forward with that project. But remember that this camera project was more about, increasing the response time and reducing an intruder's opportunity to get into the buildings and increasing the response time of first responders. So we have active cameras throughout the campuses. We've added a few in the middle school to hit some spots that we haven't used in over a decade, some of the hallway areas. But, this is going above and beyond to be the most secure district that we can be. So it's a different project. It's something to go above and beyond.
And Mr. Reed, the cameras are not, I don't know where you're referencing that, but the safety enhancements include additional fencing, communication, which is InformaCast, bulletproof film for exterior windows, alarms, and enhancements. So,
Well, that was my question is it going to include the cameras that we already talked about?
So we have the ability to move some of it's still going to fall under school safety. So like Dana shared earlier, there's things in the pamphlet you have to stay within, and then you have the ability to move 10% of that money around. So for some reason, if we don't get the grant and we didn't have the money anymore, we could still go and do that project. But
Using bond money?
yes,
Okay.
yes.
Oh, yes. I love that you found a grant and that you applied for it, thank you. I've heard before from, it was actually the previous school board president, Nadia, that there are grants available for all-day kindergarten. Have we tried to do any of those? I haven't looked into them personally, so I don't know what's available, but have we looked into that? It looks like
I
that's
have
a
not.
decent chunk.
No one has mentioned that, so to me, we can. So I
Okay.
appreciate that, and we welcome new ideas and we run with them. And like I said, we got a gym floor out of an idea. Someone said something, you should go for it. I wrote the grant, we got it, so that's coming in soon. We're definitely always looking to use any money we can that's free. There's no doubt about that. So we'll find out if we get this safety grant. That'd be huge for our town. $500,000 is a lot of money. We do a lot with that.
I have one more question. When Dr. Allen went over the list of projects with you, was he pulling that from a report, or do you
He's
have?
pulling it from visions, yeah.
Okay.
And I think where his final number was, and we'll have to look into it. I'll have to give him a call. He does answer the phone still when we call him, but he's been very gracious to come in. And in fact, he was hearing these concerns over the bond and how it was mismanaged, and he wanted to come in and show that everything was done correctly. He was very adamant about doing that.
Just since you're saying you're looking for maybe new ideas, is there any grant or anything that could be done to put like solar panels, like around where the students park, let's say?
We've talked about it briefly. It's not been, with everything we've been through in the year,
Yeah.
it hasn't hit the priority of the top with some of the things we've had to deal with. Well, we've had some discussion. I will say at Micah Mountain and Vail, the entire campus is shaded by solar panels, and it's very well designed, and it's very beautiful. And so there's a lot of spaces in there that are shaded for kids to sit at lunch, and it has a nice, kind of industrial feel to it. But no, we have not gone down that road 100%. We can look into it further as time permits.
Is our finance guy shaking his head? 'Cause
Right.
that's that
I just, working at Scottsdale, working in other districts where they're stuck in these lease financed agreements for 30 years and solar agreements that aren't giving you the kilowatts per hour that they promised. And, we're in I've heard several buyout situations, litigation. I don't think it's there yet, even though the federal government's coming around lately. There's been a lot more incentives towards solar, but it's not 100%
Not there.
one-to-one. There's still a financing piece to it, and so that is something that I would take into consideration. And
Something you just keep in the back burner.
Yeah, it's getting closer, I will say that, but just I dealt with a lot of buyouts and they're a headache, so.
I'll have just one last comment, really, in the fact that the bond is an authorization. It's not a guarantee you're gonna spend 25 million. If the need isn't there, you don't have to. You gotta do something with it over a period of 10 years.
Correct.
But we've always had leftover funds that went beyond the point, and it just, we didn't have to collect it from the taxpayer. If our needs are met, if our needs are, we're down to 2 buildings, for example, and some of these just aren't necessary, then there's no reason to spend this money. So it's only an authorization. It's not, other boards coming down the line are gonna make the decisions on how it's spent.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right, Mr. Sarkis. Yeah, the 25 million on the ballot is an authorization. There's still a process to sell the bonds. That authorization does not mean cash in hand. The bonds still have to be sold. The board still has to approve the sale of bonds. So the ballot initiative is just one step, but there's still a number of procedures in place to have controls over how those funds are spent, pending an approval of that authorization.
Sure.
So.
Okay, I have 2 more questions. We had, the board, because I wasn't on the board, asked for 20 million the last time, and what made us go up to 25 this time? Can you remind me?
Yeah, so remember, when we did the discussion on that, I did not recommend the capital overhead this time, okay? And so that equated to what, about 7 million in the last election?
700,000 a year, yeah, for 7 years.
Yeah, so, or 5 million, so close to that. So that was part of it, and then the other part was, when I spoke to Tyler and Jeremy and different groups of people, is that the costs have gone up 25% a year as well. So it is a different number now than it was a year ago. So, and also I looked at it as if the Gordon report, which is a couple years old, says everything in the district that needs to replace is 38 million. We know that Fort Peaks was something that we were going to put on the ballot. The recommendation was at 25, gives us the authorization to do as many projects as we feel we could probably do to hopefully update the district to not need work for another 20 years is the goal, right? I mean, if you look at McDowell Mountain now, it's now the new building that they moved into is 21 years old, and we're starting to see more, and like this past year, we started to see more and more issues that need to be fixed, because it's starting to age. And so I do think if it's done correctly, that we will hopefully not have to go back out again for a while. So that was, I think, the reason why.
Just before, I'll give you the time again, but when you say McDowell Mountain, you're talking about the old middle school.
Yes, we've decided not to call them that anymore, so I think
I know.
we'll move forward with the new names, but you're correct.
It'll take some time for the rest of people been around that long, because the oldest building we have is Four Peaks, next is McDowell Mountain,
Well,
old McDowell Mountain.
And I have the information.
Little Phil.
Well, but it's not, the names are not correct on that sheet.
True, I
which
got it, yeah.
Bothers me.
So we're not alone. But the point is, when you said it's 20 years old, that's the newest school that we have. Everything else is older. Other than this building, this school is 30 years old.
Other than this building, we're saying.
Yeah.
So when you say that we would hopefully not need to go out for another one for a long time, are you talking about a bond only, or are you talking about a bond over and over?
Yeah, I can't predict the future. I'm just saying that the hope would be on our end, if we were to go through these projects, is that we would fix and get the buildings to a point where, yeah, that there would, they would be in good shape, and with the annual maintenance that we need to also do along with that, will hopefully put them in a good place. Like I said, we did a lot of work at the new McDowell Mountain, but we need to go back this summer and touch up paint and fix areas that are going to be broken, as we have 425 or so students going through every day. So I think that's the bigger piece too, is just the annual maintenance. We were able to find a way to do that this year using our bus drivers and people that are typically not working in the summer. They're open to doing that again next year. So I think that will help us with maintaining the buildings.
And then one last thing, LED lighting, have we looked into other lighting or looked into the research that shows that LED lighting is disruptive for children?
Well, as you know, I'd like to see the kids outside as much as possible, and I've been very clear about that, so. But it's just more about the efficiency. We can definitely look into it further. Nothing is, we need lighting in a lot of the buildings. If you walk the buildings, there's a lot of original lighting, and it's very dark, and it's some of the pieces, like John can't replace some of the lighting anymore because some of those things don't exist, or they're hard to order, you know. So we'll definitely have discussions about all that before we finalize anything, but there is a need for lighting throughout the district, for sure.
And let me do the LED thing, because that's my thing, right? It stands for light emitting diode. And those have a lot more flexibility than incandescent lights, especially, and even fluorescents. So when it comes to moderating the light to maximize the learning environment that you're in, they have the best opportunities to do that. Fluorescents like we had here, they have none. You get what you get, right? Mm-hmm. But with LEDs, you have the ability to dim it, change colors, do it on an hourly basis. You have way more flexibility in doing that. Plus, they operate on direct current, not alternating current, so your cost of operation is much less. You have more control with low voltage controls, and I could go on for another hour because I just finished that unit with my students. So. But I'll stop with that, and we got another question here.
So I just, sorry, and you don't have to bring it up, but it's on the district facilities facts. There's confusion because the properties aren't, like McDowell Mountain Elementary is now truly the Little Falcon preschool. So that would be my comment to correct the bottom of that page.
I believe,
referencing-
correct me, I believe I fixed that, but was it 1987, the old middle school building?
Talking about the webpage?
No,
No,
on the
if you
bottom,
look at the
where it
years
says-
they were built,
it has the names
the
of,
middle school,
Well, that's the old names.
it's the
Right,
old names.
right,
Yeah,
and we should.
And I got to tell you, most of the population knows that.
right.
So,
But-
do you
Somebody-
which one do you put that's going to meet the needs of people reading it? But I get, it's got to change at some point.
We can modify that to get some clarification. Maybe we'll hyphenate the new, or like
Right.
reference
Be
bullet.
quick.
Yeah. Any more questions on that item on the agenda? If not, we'll move on to the next one, which we'll leave Tyler there. It's the fiscal year 23 annual financial report. Details on pages 21 through 29. Fire away.
Thank you, Vice President Sarr, members of the board. Back again. This presentation is the annual financial report. So every year districts are required to present and approve an annual financial report. That report this year was new. The Auditor General had new forms this year, which created a whole lot of frustration on a lot of districts' part, including myself, and which it kind of explains the lateness to the board. I do apologize for that, but they're still making updates to the forms, and so that is just showing how premature they were in trying to change the forms in a year with such short timeline. But anyways, the annual financial report covers, there's one main AFR, there's also several supplemental forms included in that report, including the food service AFR, there's a classroom site fund narrative, school level reporting, which was new just 2 years ago, CTED supplanting worksheet, and results-based funding. And so all those forms are included in the board packet, but they all encompass the general AFR. So with the AFR, this report is, the Auditor General takes this report once submitted and creates the classroom site fund reports, which come out in November. I do my best to estimate what that report's going to be based on the expenditures. And so looking at the expenditures in fiscal 23, the classroom site fund spending report is kind of summarized like this. And this is all funds, not just M&O, not just capital, all funds utilized. And
Including
expended.
grants?
Including grants, yep. Yeah. And so how that breaks down is pretty similar to last year. Some of the changes, Classroom spending is down 2%, percentage of the total expenditures. A portion of that is during the consolidation. Dr. J worked with him to want to maintain continuity and with staffing. We talked about, in terms of staffing, not changing staffing, and if people were to attrition out naturally, those would be not filled. Fortunately, you had a lot of people want to return to Fountain Hills. Dr. J has mentioned that in several reports, and so that kind of bodes into this conversation of instructional spending being down. A lot of it's due to the increase in transportation and facilities. So those facilities increased 2.2%. Again, Ms. Reed, this is why I kind of emphasize a lot of your budget now is being addressed to facilities, and that's a direct correlation to aging facilities, facilities breaking down, needing repairs. Transportation the same way, increased 1.4%. You have an aging busing fleet. It requires more maintenance. I think John told me he did a couple of engine swaps just to try to extend the life of some of your facility or transportation buses. So those increases in the total pie chart now took over some of the spending out of the classroom. And so in a total, that's where you see some of the reductions. So
Before you go on transportation, are you going to get more into transportation?
no, if you have any questions on this.
Yeah, years ago, we annexed a portion of Goldfield Ranch, kind of here and there. Are we, do we have students in those areas yet?
We do, and when I was principal, I remember they would come with mileage reimbursements and things like that, that Rob, would have me take a look at, and then he would take it from there. But yes, we do. I can't tell you off the top of my head how many. I know some of the families that were out there when I was principal, but we do get it. I would get maybe 3 a year that did mileage reimbursement. So it was a small number.
And I don't think, though, they were inside our boundaries out there. I think they were just out there and in a non-district area.
Yeah, we actually, I believe recently we just had a conversation with Mason that sunflower is in our area as well. So we do extend a little further. And in Fountain Hills, the other thing that I think a lot of people maybe don't realize as much is that we have a lot of ground to cover in Fountain Hills with our buses too. With one high school, everybody in the whole town goes to one school. And so if you're all the way behind Target or you're all the way up past Golden Eagle, you're all coming to the same spot. So, I think John does a tremendous job of, he's been able to keep the costs pretty down. He's been able to keep us moving. We're one of the few districts that has a full staff of bus drivers. It's servicing kids every day. But, there are going to be needs that come up with transportation over time. But we have a great mechanic in Ray who does a great job of keeping us on the road. So happy with where we're at with transportation, but there's definitely, I think, areas where we can reduce costs over time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you want me to wait until the end, or do you want me to ask slide by slide?
Do you mind waiting?
No, not at all.
Okay, thank you. Looking at what generates a lot of your budget and expenditures are ADM, right? So last 6 fiscal years, I did this same slide, and we were only looking at 22. It was a sharp decline, but FY23 was a good year for Fountain Hills in terms of stopping the bleeding and actually capturing some ADM back into the district. And so that's a positive slide to look at and something to build on as we're looking towards fiscal 24. Then when you look at summary of budget controlled funds, so budget controlled funds, I've discussed this before, are pretty much maintenance operations, capital, and your federal and state grants. And so these are budget driven and not derived by cash. Some of your expenditures year to date, you'll see maintain pretty steady. So again, you'll see an increase from 22 to 23. A lot of that, again, derived, you have more students, you're gonna have a little more needs. Capital cost, $700,000. A lot of those board-approved projects were encumbered, weren't expensed in 23. I'm talking about the consolidation. So you'll see a lot of those expenses come in 24. and federal and state grants. I didn't break down all of those, but again, those are budget controlled. And so sometimes you'll see on the AFR forms, if you go take a deep dive in those, you'll see sometimes a negative fund balance or a negative ending balance. And that's because ADE operates on a reimbursement policy. So ADE is the federal administrator for Arizona schools in terms of authorizing and approving federal grants, the district expense grants, submits for reimbursement and gets reimbursed after the fact. So those funds typically go negative as they're then reimbursed. And so,
Can I just share something on that?
yeah,
So we don't have a grant person like a lot of districts do, that's their full-time job. Krista does that for us, and she's done a great job this year of learning the grants and making sure they're on time and we're getting reimbursed for them. And so I think a lot of times when people don't realize how many hats everybody wears up here, that's an example of that. And she has done a great job of not only keeping the grants we have, but ensuring we're getting the new ones. We got the counselors this year, we got the gym floor this year, hopefully we get the safety one. That's a testament to the work she's done. So I want to say that is something we don't have a full-time grant person.
Sticking on budget control funds, so a lot of what you can carry forward. Carry forward is a popular topic because that is something you can add on to the budget in your budget formula. So when they do look at building a budget, you take your formula, you take your ADM times the state allocation, and then you do your add-on of your carry forward. So the summary of your budget control groups, your carry forward amounts, have steadily, in M&O, have steadily declined. 620,000 is approximately 5.7% of your total M&O budget. A general rule of thumb is anywhere from 4 to 8% is a conservative amount. And again, that 600,000 is held for unforeseen circumstances. You have an emergency, you have anything come in that cannot be funded from other resource. This is the bucket that is tapped into. And so generally this carry forwards from year to year because you never know when something emergency will come about. But yeah, that's 5.7% of the total budget. So that's in a good place. With capital, it works a little different. Obviously, you have a bigger capital. When you're looking at capital expenditures, you have a bigger footprint when you're talking about expenditures. So this budget has accumulated over the years in terms of budget balance carried forward. Kane, over last year, sat down and came up with a plan. Everybody knows it's the consolidation plan. And the investment into the new elementary school and trying to revamp enrollment and change the district in terms of its footprint and give the students at that new elementary school something to look forward to. So we'll see that budget amount carried forward again is very high in 23 because a lot of those encumbrances, those board approved projects were not expended in 23. We'll see those expended in 24 and that budget balance carried forward will then see probably a sharper decline when we look at 24 carry forward numbers. So again, that's as planned. We've talked about this numerous times. So the other kind of group of funds is called your cash controlled funds. This is really like the rest of your funds. The main cash controlled funds I'm going to highlight here tonight are Fund 510, which is your food service operations. Fund 515, Civic Center, that's your rental fund. 520, it's your community school, so that's your preschool and also your, I don't believe you guys offer before and after school, just preschool. So Fund 290, Medicaid reimbursement, and Fund 570, indirect costs. So other cash controlled funds that are generated and typically accrued by the school, which the district kind of is the bypass for those, but we don't typically, the school is the one, that authority that authorizes those and plans for expenditures is Fund 525, auxiliary operations, Fund 526, extracurricular activities, and Fund 850, student activities. So looking at those cash balances, again, this is cash, so you take, just works like a check. You got beginning balance, you got revenue, expenditures, and ending balance. And so the funds in general have stayed relatively flat. Civic Center has purposely not been touched. we were trying to grow that fund as an additional contingency fund. That is majority of the rental from Four Peaks. But as you know, that is on the ballot for this fiscal year for voters to approve to sell that or not. So the rest of the funds are, again, relatively flat from year to year. The balances are relatively low when you look at cash-controlled funds and having a healthy balance. Considering if something were to happen to that revenue, you would have to rely on that carryover to support that fund. And so when you look at some of these balances, and specifically community schools, 37,000, there's a number of teachers funded from there. And so it is relatively low, in which I know Dr. J has brought price increases for that program to try to support that program going forward. But that is a risk that you take. Well, I guess where it's sitting at now is definitely in a lower than expected ending fund balance. So the rest, again, relatively flat. Not a lot.
But I don't think the Civic Center is net of expenses, is it?
There was no expenses.
So we know there are expenses in that McDowell or in that Four Peaks building.
Yeah.
That if
Been
we
supplemented.
were to net that, that would be a rather downward spiral, not spiral, a downward sloping line.
Yeah, the capital fund has picked up the expenses for
Yes,
those.
right.
So
Or else
The
it would have
dark
been
blue
completely
line.
eliminated. I mean, you would not have any money.
You're saying the dark blue line represents Four Peaks, the Civic Center, that's what, that one?
It's the majority of your rental revenue,
Okay.
yeah, comes from Four Peaks.
Rental in this room is included in there too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
district-wide, yeah.
All rentals.
Yeah. It's not just Four Peaks, so. With that, I have any questions, so.
It's a lot.
Go for it.
Okay.
So if we can go back to page 2, the classroom spending report. Just some clarity on a couple of them. So in our plant, does that currently include our security guards, or are they under classroom?
No, they're funded from Function 2600, which is included in school plan.
Is it possible in future years to get a trending report? I had to go back to the Auditor General website to kind of compare and see the trends. I appreciate all the effort that you
Yeah.
guys did, but if there was a way to see some trends, I think that would be helpful.
Absolutely, yeah, we can start including like a look back like I did with the budget balance and stuff like that, so, yeah, so we can see, yeah.
Do we have any targeted percentages for these categories for this coming year going forward? You know, are we aiming to get our classroom, let's say, back up, that instruction back up to 47 or higher, since that's where our teachers are funded from? And which category would we then see, hopefully, to see a lower percentage coming from? Is there budget planning surrounding this at all?
Yes, so when I came in and we looked at the situation and we watched as the year went on and we saw enrollment start to go up a little bit, and seeing that we were doing a major consolidation to the district, I did not want to have positions that we would not be, like if we cut and then we needed them back, not be able to find somebody. I don't think anyone truly understands, unless you're here in this business, how hard it is to find people right now. It is very challenging. And so what I wanted to do is to ensure that there was some stability with all the change. There was a lot of change in a year. And we talked to the teachers about it. I am very, very visible in the campuses. One of the things that we did not want to do in year one was change up the administration, because a lot of the teachers have been through a lot of administrative changes. They've been through 3 superintendents, 5 principals at the middle school, 3 principals at the high school, 3 principals at the elementary school, all really since COVID, right? Okay. So we needed some stability there to keep our teacher retention where it was. We were able to give raises last year, which teachers were appreciative of. We were able to fill some of the longevity issues that the districts had. They did not have a pay scale for a long time. So a lot of our teachers and staff, classified staff also got some nice increases that were long overdue. So yes, I think administration costs are high right now. I do think that that is something we need to look at. I would love to see our plant numbers go down through more efficient ways of doing things. We'll see what happens as the year progresses. And then transportation is one. Again, there's not a lot in if the bond were to come into play. I don't believe there was a lot, if any, on transportation in there at this time. I don't think we can, right, on that? No, so that's why. So yeah, that is, I think the plan is to reduce in those areas, so plant and administration.
I think too, with the consolidation efforts, you're now not maintaining a complete building at the former elementary, so hopefully some of those utility costs come down, the maintenance comes down on that when it's not being used. But as far as goals, it increases too.
Yeah, and remember, the teachers, I believe that right now, coming out of a really tough time for the district, I mean, let's be honest, the last couple of years have been pretty tough. We wanted to make sure that the teachers did feel supported. I get that feeling when I walk around, and I talk to them frequently, especially at McDowell Mountain, where we've had an increase in behaviors in all schools since the pandemic. We've been able to get ahead of a lot of those. We've done a lot of work to ensure that teachers feel they're supported in those areas. And so yeah, there's definitely got to be a push to get that classroom number back up. But when we also factor in some of the other pieces that our classroom support, like counselors, even though we get those on grant, but counselors, behavior specialists, security guards, those make a difference in the teacher's experience on campus as well. So I think it does go beyond just that one number, but we do need to raise it.
Can I ask a couple questions before you shift from this?
I still have a few more.
Okay.
Sorry. So I was looking at our admin costs last year, and it was about $500 higher per student than our peer districts. And then with the increase this year, it is just a little bit concerning. Do you know what our admin per student cost is for this year?
No, again, the Auditor General creates that report that you're referencing. I do my best I know which categories they put into the reports. I do my best to showcase what that report might look like. And so until that report's published, I won't have those numbers, because they'll also compare peer districts, state average. They'll have more data than I have access to, so I don't have those.
Right. And then, since you brought up the schools, I do have some concerns when I'm looking at our admin positions, and our student enrollment at McDowell Mountain is 422, and we have 2 admins there, and then our enrollment at the middle school is 240, and we have 2 admins. Is there plans to reallocate any staff or provide assistance to, because even high school, we have 408 and we have 3 admins there. So our site that has the most student population has the least administrative support.
So I will say that when I left as principal, I had an assistant principal, and that was it. So that position was created when I was gone, okay? So my first year as principal, we had 2 deans and a principal. That was reduced to 1 assistant principal. I will tell you, I've spent a lot of time at McDowell Mountain, and I do believe they need that support right now, okay? I'm there a lot, and I can tell you that the teachers, I believe, would say that they need that support right now. At the middle school, it was about, again, the plan has been to rebuild that school. That school's been through a lot, been through 5 principals. Val Reichler has been a mainstay of this community, and I believe that she brought the stability that Kim needed when she started to have parents and students start having more confidence in what we're doing there. And I believe it will, I think it's paying off now. I've seen a massive transformation at that school. The new Honors and Gifted program is a huge success. I do expect more kids coming out of McDowell to not choose to go somewhere else because they can get that challenged curriculum right here. But that's why we did what we did. Remember, she's on teacher salary. She's not on an admin salary. So we have 2 deans that are both paid as teachers. Yes, they could be, back in the classroom. So it's something we'll look at for sure at the high school.
Can I ask
yeah.
a point of clarification here? So I understand they're on teacher salaries, but that still is then in that administrative category?
Correct, because they're not in the classroom. Yeah.
Okay.
I think the high school though is, if the enrollment, we have a huge senior class leaving. They've grown mightily over the years. I have a son in that class and they just keep coming and coming and coming to that class, but that's gonna hurt us next year. And so, yeah, we're gonna have to have some conversations about what do we do with the high school. I do understand that, yes.
Okay.
On that page, she's.
Yeah, before we leave this slide, you mentioned that the classroom spending was down 2%?
Yeah.
And then when you mentioned that facilities increased 2% and transportation
Facilities 2.2, transportation 1.4.
1.4, and then you kind of said took spending out of the classroom. Is that what caused the classroom spending to go down, or was it
So
other
you
things?
gotta
that we did?
remember, this pie chart is encompassing all expenditures in the district. So when you have one category increase, another category's gotta give.
Yes, I understand. So
So-
is that what happened, is our costs over there?
Those are the 2 big
Increased, we
increases.
pulled.
Yeah, so across everything then shrinks.
And facilities would include things like HVAC and air conditioning and things, work like that, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Plant.
That would be plant,
Yes.
HVAC and things like that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Next.
Okay. So just move to the next slide.
This one?
Yes,
Okay.
please. So just for clarification for those in the community, the ADM number, how do our virtual students and our kinder and pre-K fall into ADM funding, and if at all?
Sure. Yeah, so ADM is the acronym. I should have spelled that out. I apologize for this.
No,
It's
we
average
know
daily
this.
membership. So it's not a head count. So if you go around, Fountain Hills, you'll probably see a number higher than this. But it's average daily membership for the first 100 days of instruction. And so those first 100 days typically go into January. And then anything after that, if you get more student enrollment, you do not get credit for that. So you have to support those new students without additional funding. And your hope is those students then stay with the district going forward. So,
But no,
I'm gonna
our
go.
preschool.
I'm gonna go into that.
Okay.
Yeah. So, little summary of ADM. So, with preschool, preschool is not funded by the state, so you do not get credit for that, with the exception of SPED students.
Right.
SPED students who have a qualifying IEP do get state funding. Moving up to kinder, that again, I've mentioned that's state provides 0.5 funding. So, for every kinder head, you get one kinder fully enrolled, you only get 0.5 of that funding. So the state per pupil amount's like 4,700. So take that divided by 2. Moving up, and then from 1st to 12th, those are all funded at the per pupil weight with additional Group B weights. If you have a SPED student or gifted, there's additional state add-ons for those, or if they're free and reduced, or other. There's a laundry list of additional add-ons. Looking at the virtual academy, those are funded. If you were a part-time virtual academy, those get 85% funding, and then if you have a full-time, you get 95% of that funding amount. So it is a little bit of a loss for those students, but I will tell you, if you don't have that program, then you're going to lose them anyway. And so that's been the consensus with most districts. If you're not offering that, somebody else is, and you're going to lose 95% of the ADM anyway. So that's a little bit of summary. Any more detail?
That's perfect.
Okay.
Perfect. Next page, if you, okay. So the summary of budget controls.
These are expenditures. So
I feel like you answered some of them. We can go on from that page, I'm sorry.
Carry forward.
So the carry, yes, the summary of budget control or the carry forward, correct?
Yep.
So I pulled, actually I looked further down in our packet, at a page down in our,
Which page?
4. It's actually page 1 of 10 in the finance report, the AFR. And it has at the top our maintenance and operation funds available and unrestricted capital outlay. Are you on that same
Yeah.
page? Okay. So at the bottom, you have the 1.5 and the 2.2. Am I correct that those would be the dollars carry forward?
No, it's fund balance, it's cash.
So then can you explain the difference between the 3.2 and these two?
Yeah, so when you do get, like these are budget controlled funds. When you set your property taxes in August, you set them to the budgeted amount. As you get projects revenue throughout the year, the Maricopa County Superintendent's Office maintains your cash balances. And those can often fluctuate. If you're not taxing enough, you have less cash revenue. And so what you'll see, and it's explained more on the summary page, where you'll see it cleared. But occasionally you can get different amounts between cash and what you have budgetarily authority for. Because there's fluctuation, like you can have SRP in lieu of taxes, you can have people not pay taxes, so you set a property tax rate based on estimated property tax values, residents living in the community. So you have to constantly update that. But your statutory authority for Fountain Hills as a district is your budgeted amount, which are included on the adopted budget or any revised budget that you do. Your cash amount can fluctuate within that, and it's the district's job to work with the county superintendent's office to make sure you're setting property taxes to capture enough revenue to cover that budgetary amount. So without diving like into the Excel and like looking at this further, that is my closest estimate of why that discrepancy is there, but I can do some more research on that, Ms. Settle, and get back to you. But there's discrepancies that you'll see on the summary page, and that is that reason. That's why I talk about budget funds versus cash funds, because you have two different authorities for those.
Right. Okay.
But I will follow up.
If I can follow up on that, in the 90s when we were growing by hundreds of students every year, and we were, add to that, we were funded a year later.
Oh yeah, prior year funding. Yeah, we're on current year funding now.
Yeah, we actually had to borrow money to cover cash.
TANs.
Yep, and it was pretty common. You know, we had a source that the county had, and we borrowed money and we paid it back, and everything got caught up. But there was 4 or 5 years when we were always in the negative because we were growing. So that kind of changed when we went to current year funding, and now we're on a decline and have been for years, so we don't have that as an issue anymore.
Yeah.
I have a quick question for the slide.
Are you, before she
Go
was
ahead.
still going here?
I'm okay on this slide. We can.
Can I ask one
Okay.
real quick on this one? You mentioned that we would see that carry forward number drop as consolidation.
For the capital fund, yes.
Yes, that they would be coming out in 24. How much of the consolidation budget came from that carry forward?
How much from the consolidation budget? Well, it's a combination of carry forward and your annual capital budget. So we set that amount at 2.5 million. Off the top of my head, I don't know how much was expended in 2023 versus how much is going to be expended in 24.
So was there a set amount that was planned on coming from
Carry
carry
forward?
forward specifically?
A majority of it was. So in talks with Dr. J, that we looked at what we were sitting on in terms of fund balance, and it was part of the conversations with the consolidation and having enough funding to make that plan happen.
And then what fund are club stipends paid from?
That's gonna be a cash-controlled fund, so that's on this page here, like, typically club stipends are paid from 850. You may have clubs that are run, tax credit clubs, who take tax credit revenue, so they, depending on balance, it could be paid from either one of those two.
Okay.
If we're on this page right here, the one fund that I'm not seeing, and maybe it isn't in the K-12 world, but restricted funds for bonds, for bonds and, more importantly, grants. And those are restricted funds. You're restricted to the grant itself. Do we have a fund for restrictions like that?
Yeah, I talk about it on this slide here, the third bullet here, funds 100 through 399 are your federal and state funds. Again, they're on the AFR. I didn't feel there was much value in going into each of those by detail, but yeah, those are restricted funds. They're budgeted, again, depending on which administration, ADE manages a lot of your federal and state funds, but Dr. J and Chris have procured other grant funds from other entities who do have a bypass, whether it's state funding or federal funding. So, and even the governor's office has a number of funds,
Sure.
Grant funds that they authorize as well. And all those land in that 100 to 399 range, and those are restricted funds. And yeah, again, outlined in the AFR.
Gotcha.
I didn't.
Do you know about how much that equated to last year of our budget?
I would have to. I can make a note on that, but I don't off the top of my head.
Okay.
Go.
Okay, summary of district cash funds. So I want to go back and revisit something that Vice President Saar said regarding the Civic Center funds. Is there a specific reason why we are not choosing to pay the repairs and maintenance for the renters of our property on Four Peaks out of this balance?
Yeah, so this is when you're talking cash control funds, they have a little more flexibility than your capital budget. And so if for some reason that sale that's not approved by the voters, right, we still have to maintain that. Obviously, we'll go here to support that. But if that sale does come to fruition, we can now utilize this rental money for salaries or benefits. It can go interchangeably between capital and M&O. And anytime you get an opportunity as a district to have another source of revenue or a source of funds where you have some flexibility, it is advantageous to the district to, again, have that opportunity to utilize a funding source like Civic Center for those nice to have, maybe a teacher incentive stipend or something along those lines. So with the ballot, with the sale for being on the ballot, took the opportunity to potentially sit on some revenue that could be repurposed for M&O or capital expense. So now if that doesn't go through, as you know, that facility has a number of needs. And so that $300,000 will be quickly exhausted to just keep that operational because that's just a whole nother conversation. But
So then, does this include our pickleball?
anything rented in the facility,
Anything
yeah.
rented goes straight to that? Okay.
Statutorily, that's where the revenue has to be deposited, 515. So
And then if we can go to community schools, and again, just matching, like, I really struggle that none of the numbers,
on the
either on our unaudited financial reports to these, none of them match. So, and maybe it's because so let's look at our June financial report that was given to the board. It was prior to
that's
this.
not gonna.
It's not gonna match because
No.
you go in after it's been given to the
Yeah,
board
those are unaudited.
and make changes.
Yeah, that's not gonna, that's taking any transactions through June. We're well into October. Transactions, we're still working, the 22 AFR is closed out, but we were still making transactions and adjustments in the prior fiscal year all the way up through October. So that's why those are unaudited. It's supposed to be giving you a snapshot of the financial picture. And then audited reports such as the AFR give you actual numbers.
So the follow-up question to that then is, do we know what accounts for that significant drop in the community schools balance?
I can't speak to, I mean, just use of the funds. I can look into that for you. I don't have an answer.
That is it for me. Thank you.
Any additional questions? This is just information only. If not, we'll move on to the next item, which.
I do have one point, Mr. Secretary, if I can. So this is on approval for the board. I just want to note that this report, while, maybe you don't agree with how the district spent the money, or you did, this is how, this is the report, this is how the expenditures were made. Approval of that AFR is required statutorily, so if that is not approved tonight, the district would be kind of be out of compliance. This would further cause issue with the Attorney General and their compliance review, as well as the state and the audit. So we would have to bring it back again for approval, but statutorily, if this isn't approved by October 15th, the district is out of compliance. And so I'm happy, again, if we want to have more conversations, I know there's some follow-up. I'm happy to come back and do a study session or a deeper dive into this report. But again, this report is final and expenditures. It's how it's-
And technically, this is old news in terms of.
Right.
We're going to be, in the upcoming meeting, talk about budgets for next year. So we've got that kind of flexibility when it comes to spending. When we talk about the future, but the past is past. There's nothing we can do about it except make sure that we comply with the bureaucracies involved.
Yeah.
Well, I move we approve the.
We're not there yet.
Later.
Oh, we can't, okay.
I
We have
just-
to wait
I just
till you're
wanted to
done?
make-
Okay.
So thank you.
Okay, so let's move on then to the student activity and auxiliary accounts, details on pages 30 through 45. Comments or questions?
Tyler, do you want to stay up there, or Alicia? I had emailed Alicia prior, and I appreciate your response, and I think probably a sit-down to go over all of them. I appreciate all the hard work you've done to kind of clean up, but trying to understand where, like, now certain accounts are gone, but maybe higher balances don't exist. So I'm trying to figure out where some of the accounts went, what accounts for the funds no longer being there. For example, and again, I realize you've gone back and changed, and we're only looking at a snapshot in time, but when I'm held accountable as a board member for these items, and if I look at middle school STUGO, our June ending balance is 14,000 and some change, and our July beginning is almost 13,000, 12,800. The discrepancies are bothersome for me. So getting a better understanding as to why we will continue to see these ongoing discrepancies would be appreciated.
We do have an encumbrance period after the school year ends through August 31st to kind of make any adjustments that need to happen in the system, and it actually does kind of fall into place with the AFR. So that's why those discrepancies are happening. Those adjustments happen during the encumbrance period that may reduce that ending balance.
What kind of adjustments are we doing after the
It
fact?
could be anything from outstanding bills. Say that club had an invoice that was just received in June, paid in August. You would not see that expenditure on the June financial, but that did come from that club, but it's paid in August.
So then you would backdate it
No, we can't back.
June? No.
No.
So then why is my June AFR, or my June financial changing if we're paying it in August? And we can't backdate to June?
They said July.
Well, my June to July balances don't match. So you are, in essence, then putting it back in a June time period, although you're paying it in August.
After we close out the fiscal went back and not backed it, but input beginning fund balances as of July 1 for that, encompassing all the incumbents period up until June 30, and then from the incumbents period in case any revenue was taken in or expenditures were expended.
So you actually put in new balances, it doesn't roll forward from,
From June to July, yeah. You're going to see some more adjustments on your August.
So there's no audit trail for that?
There is, yeah, you can see it, but it's hard to put in financial, unless, like, we can show you, we can run it out, like 2 fiscal years, so you can see a June financial, or July financial for 22, or excuse me, 23 and 24, and then August financial for 22 and 20, so you can follow it, and then you'll see it all in September, then.
Yeah, that would be helpful. I mean, there's transaction detail for all of those in your audit trail. So if, I don't want to have it for every month, but this, the
The
movement
ending.
from one fiscal year to the next is always going to cause some issues. But I think it would be helpful for the detail to have the transaction detail that shows why there's a difference in the beginning and ending balance.
I think the best solution is we run 2 financial reports. You'll get a fiscal year 22 for July
Okay.
and August. You get 2, and you'll get one for the new activity in 24. And then that way you can just see, you can track both, prior year activity and
Okay.
2-year activity and reconcile. It'll clear the picture. But that's the reason you see discrepancies.
I get the reason, but having that, I don't know, my accounting background, I'm big on audit trails. Right?
Yeah, I think the 2 fiscal year financial report will.
Okay.
That would be good.
and then one additional question, I think you answered some of it with the ADE reimbursements, is why we're not seeing Title I funds and we're seeing a negative balance. But on the unrestricted capital outlay, that was the question I did email. It's not matching the adopted budget. Is there a reason why?
That was my mistake.
Okay.
I'm gonna correct those. I did actually adjust it in the email.
Okay.
But I would correct those and I would send a new report if you wanted me to.
Okay, that'd be great, thank you. As far as, the new report would be the unaudited July financial, okay, perfect.
And can that be sent to Krista so that it can be sent to the whole board? Thank you.
Any more discussion on the student activity and auxiliary accounts? And let's move on to the unaudited financial report on pages 46 and 47.
Sorry, I jumped ahead,
You're forgiven.
thank you.
Hearing no discussion, I'll move on to the site council minutes for information purposes on pages 48 through 55. Any comments or questions on that?
Congratulations to Kevin on buying a home in Fountain Hills.
Yes.
Yeah. Lastly, under reports, we have the current enrollment report on page 56. Hearing none, we'll move on, which means I got to read this. Do we have a public comments?
Yeah, it's sitting right at Jill's seat back.
No, you, papers to read.
There's a binder upstairs,
No.
but at Jill's.
But you have forms for public comment?
Oh, I thought you wanted to read the statement.
Not if I don't have to.
Oh, no, I have one. Yes,
Oh,
you have
okay.
to read it, sorry.
All right, bear with me. The following shall be read to those attending prior to commencing any call to the public. Call the public, this is a time for the public to comment. Time limits may be allocated on public comment at the discretion of the board president for the board to efficiently complete its business. The board reserves the right to prohibit any comments made in a discourteous or threatening manner. Complaints about specific individuals, students, or personnel are discouraged. Personnel issues should be directed to the appropriate staff member or administrator per district policy. Members of the board may not discuss items that are not specifically identified on the agenda. Therefore, pursuant to ARS, action taken as a result of public comment will be limited to directing staff to study the matter, responding to any criticism, or scheduling the matter for further consideration and discussion at a later date. have one. And I'm probably gonna just totally destroy Kim's last name. So Kim, would you come up and introduce yourself and your address, please? I'll fill in the blanks.
Okay, you want me to put my address down after?
Just tell me and I can write.
13517 North Sunset Drive.
Thank you. And I'll count 3 minutes in my head, so
Okay,
Yeah.
all
go
right.
for it.
I'm Kim Garrett. Hi, everybody. I think I know all of you somewhat, right? I'm a parent, husband, all that stuff. We have 2 daughters in the district. I've been on site councils at the elementary school, middle school, high school since, I think for the past 8 years. Been pretty involved in the district. This is my first time giving a public comment, and I gotta say, like, the first time is always a little nerve-wracking.
Kim,
So-
put it a little bit higher.
A little higher, yeah. Is this better? Okay. Hopefully I don't move too much. Okay, so many of us who support the district and district staff have kind of slept on public comments for a little too long, I think. So thank you for those who have shown support in the past. There are common phrases like, before you judge a man, walk a mile in his shoes. There's a cognitive bias called the Dunning-Kruger effect, which basically states that you learn a little bit about a topic and you tend to assume that you know a lot more about it than you actually do. It's a really common thing. That's why it has a name. So I've experienced this in like photography. When I started off with my photography hobby, I learned a little bit about like aperture, shutter speed, ISO, and I thought I knew a lot more about like how photography worked. And then I started actually shooting weddings and just as a hobby, food photography, and I realized just how little I knew about the topic. And I met with people who were like really experienced about, photographers and learned a ton. So that's kind of like you get into the known knowns, the Donald Rumsfeld thing, right? The unknown, the known knowns, the known unknowns, and the unknown unknowns. So you don't realize just how much you don't know. You don't know what you don't know, I guess is the thing there. So both of these things, both of these phrases, like the Dunning-Kruger effect and walk a mile, don't judge a man before you walk a mile in his shoes, both of these deal with judging people without really understanding or having any real understanding or insight into what they're doing. In other words, it's common for us to make assumptions and judgments before we have enough information. This also reminds me of Teddy Roosevelt's 1910 speech, Citizenship in a Republic, commonly known as the Man in the Arena. To quote the most well-known part of the speech, this is like older English, so this is kind of hard. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes up short again and again, because there's no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows the great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat.
You have 30 seconds.
Thank you. Okay, so to be honest, in my 20s, I made these mistakes a lot. I made a lot of assumptions. I assumed that I knew what my boss did. And it was really humbling when I became a boss and a people manager myself. We call that hubris, right? When you make a lot of assumptions and have a little bit of arrogance about that. I've never been a teacher, principal, superintendent. I can only guess as an outsider how difficult these jobs are based on what little experience I have. And even if I did have experience doing their jobs, I wouldn't agree with every decision that they make. I might do things differently.
Wrap it up, please.
Yeah, I don't agree with my coworkers. I guess what I really want to say is there's many paths to success. I really like what Dr. J is doing. And I want to thank the board, Dr. J, the staff, the teachers for doing everything you do. As a community member, I see it, and I really appreciate you.
Thank you. That was the only one we had, so we'll move on to the next area of our agenda, which are action items. There are 8 of them tonight. We'll start with the first one, which is the Personnel Action Report, and the detail is on page 57. Do I hear a motion?
I move that we accept the personnel action report.
I second.
Motion is made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, take the vote. All those in favor of the Personnel Action Report, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Next item on the action agenda is payroll vouchers. The details are on pages 58 through 62. Do I hear a motion?
I move we approve the payroll vouchers.
I second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it unanimously. Next on the agenda is the accounts payable vouchers. The details are on pages 63 through 75. Do I hear a motion?
I have some questions on this.
Let's
Do we
do
do the
motion.
motion first?
Yeah.
Okay.
I move we approve the accounts payable.
I'll second. Discussion.
I just had a couple that there's one that I'd like to discuss with you just personally, but there's a couple that I just wanted to read because they're a little concerning. So there was a Bel Air charge. Let's see. Sorry, I screenshot a few of them. Okay, so this one, it's for Old 4 Peaks Elementary Building. It says that they arrived on site, checked in with customer, provided roof access, and located unit to be unit serving room 230. AC serves bike shop and tenant was not on site for spaced access. Found unit off at disconnect with fuses pulled out. Found board in unit to be completely in-wired and laying in bottom of cabinet. To me, that's concerning because I don't see the tenant having pulled the fuses out, so to me that would indicate maybe previous work not having been done correctly, so that's something that I would follow up on. There was this one, $215 for Bel Air. Boys restroom, 400 wing needs urinal lowered. Checked in with customer and was shown to the middle school. The first urinal in the first grade restroom needs lowered by 6 inches. Submitted quote to complete the job. Was that something that we needed to pay someone that much to come out and measure? Is that something we could have done differently?
I don't have anyone that can move the urinal, so.
No, I understand, but he's charging us $215 to come out and look at it and tell us it needs to be lowered 6
Well,
inches.
let's check with John first, because
Okay.
that might be part of the total bill of what they do. I can't imagine that, I'd be very shocked to find out that there's a fee to come out and look at it and to get a quote. It does need to be lowered though.
Okay. I think the rest I could probably just ask you. Yeah, I think the other ones I can
So I want to thank you, Dr. J, for implementing and acknowledging the procedure for ACE hardware that we talked about. I follow up that I would like to see some procedures to identify and confirm the deliveries that are in question, maybe before that reaches the board level, saying that we don't know if it was received at the warehouse. If that can be confirmed, I think that would clear up some of the things. Past due notices, kind of always, again, a procedure in place or an acknowledgement that we're not going to see any late fees for these past due notices. And then finally, I realize it takes a lot of time because I've sat in those shoes correcting our billing names on our invoices so they reflect actual current employees versus employees we no longer have. I would appreciate that.
Okay, I actually have a couple more, sorry. There's one invoice for Hawkeye Electric for $33,000, and it talks about some building G&J lighting repairs per quote. And there is a purchase order, but I don't see a copy of the quote in the folder that we have access to. Is there a way to get that? And then, there's a textbook that was purchased, Discovering Art History. Was that something that came before the board? Or that went through the process?
We've not, if we do a textbook, we go through the adoption, and since I've been here, we've not successfully done any adoption, so I can tell you that it could just be a replacement book that is something that's already previously board approved. But we've not had any discussion with our art department at all about any books that I'm aware of.
And then, one last one I'll ask in the meeting. We have an invoice for wholesale floors. It was brought to my attention that they have donated to, I believe it was Scottsdale's Pro Bond Committee. Did they donate to ours? It was just a question that was brought to me.
I'm not a part of the PAC, so I can't answer that.
Okay. Thank you.
It? Okay, any more discussion on this item? We've had a motion and a second for accounts payable vouchers. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say nay.
I'll be abstaining.
As an abstain?
Yes.
Okay, so 3 ayes and 1 abstention? The item passes. Next item on the agenda is donations, and they are listed on pages 76 through 80. Do I hear a motion?
I move that we approve the donations.
A second.
You have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I just had one question. I did see in there a donation that was made by a parent, and it looked like the donation was to help with some needs with their student.
Page 79.
Thank you.
Yes.
And I was wondering if we are fully staffed in the special ed department, and we have, or not special ed, the special needs.
Yeah, I would have to ask about the donation more specifically. We have radios, we've purchased additional radios, we have a radio in every classroom at McDowell Mountain. So I'd have to look into it further, but are we fully staffed in special ed? No.
I meant in the special needs, because the student, the aides that help him, do they have support, the kind of support that they need? Does the student have the support that they need?
Yeah, I would.
We can't-
I'd have to have.
we can't discuss
that.
We can't,
I can't. I shouldn't.
That's a little bit outside the scope of this item.
Okay.
You can ask that question outside. of-
Okay.
Or we can set up a call, yeah.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Thank you. Any more discussion? Hearing none, we'll take the vote. All those in favor of the donation list signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Motion passes unanimously. Next item is what we talked about earlier, which is the approval of the fiscal year 23 annual financial report. The details are on pages 81 through 159, as well as what we've heard this evening. Is there a motion?
Yes, I move we approve the annual financial report.
I'll second. Discussion.
I just have another question. Is there a reason why the pages are split in half? It made it really hard to,
Is there one of those
Follow.
that's really long like that? So I was wondering if there's any way we can get,
Legal, you're talking about legal papers
Legal.
that squashed down into
it was
a...
really hard. yeah.
one half of the page is on one page, and then you have to scroll to the next page
Yeah.
to see the other half, so I lose the front,
Right.
the category.
A second monitor takes care of that for you.
We might be able,
Well, I'd have to open on
Just
two
put it right next
computers.
to each
No,
other.
that's
and
just
you-
it,
we can look into if there's a way to save it as a PDF in a larger, like,
Yeah.
landscape, so some we can do, yes.
Yeah, I think so too, Adobe, and I wouldn't know how to do it when your packet is
Yeah, you-
It was-
Because I took their files and it converted it to PDF, and so.
We might be able to do
I don't know
that.
which ones you're talking about, but.
We might be able to do that with a Mac, we'll look at it.
If you look at, like, let's say page, if you
That
look at
hurts,
page,
that hurts.
I can send you the files individually.
I took my initial look through this, but I
Me
don't,
too, yeah. It was still very hard. It's almost like if we got the printout, it'd be a lot easier to.
I think there's a way, I think there's a way to do it. We just need to research
something
it.
for
Yes.
future would be,
Yeah, the files that I sent to her, so.
again, don't want to add a lot to your plate, but I appreciate kind of a sit down at some point. I realize time is of the essence for this report, but when I'm looking at our budgeted reports and I realize that this is our actual and our final, just trying to figure out why those changes, a summary page of changes might be nice versus trying to look at every single account, you know, when we have 4 million, yeah, thank you.
There's always, with technology, better formats. And better data analysis abilities. So I think we just have to move with the flow with technology.
Can I ask one more question? So I know in the past we've funded some of our salaries out of ESSER, and just kind of a concern moving forward. Where will those salaries be paid from?
Yeah, it's a budget conversation that Alicia will have as that expires in 24. So,
Oh, we only had like 60 to use, right? And we had over 345 allocated in salaries?
Some of those are counselors though, I believe, and we did get those on a grant, so I think that will help with that fiscal cliff a little bit, if I'm not mistaken. All the ESSER money, to my knowledge, minus what's left, was spent before I got here. So I can, oh, ESSER 3, okay, but some of the positions that were on there either don't exist anymore or are counselor positions that we did make a step in the right direction to make that fiscal cliff smaller. But yeah, we're gonna have some discussions, you know, regardless if, you know, enrollment stays flat even, we're gonna have to, which, you know, I still am hopeful that by the end of the year we'll break even, you know, we'll see. But we got a big class leaving, so we're gonna have to have some discussions regardless, so we know that.
And that's the budget discussions that we're coming
Yeah.
up on. So.
Okay.
More discussion? If not, we'll take the vote. All those in favor of fiscal year 23 annual financial report, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say no. Motion passes unanimously. Number 6, board approval of fundraisers. And that, it looks like it's on page 160. Do I hear a motion?
I move that we approve the approval of fundraisers.
I second.
Motion's made and seconded. Discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All those in favor of board approval of fundraisers signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Next item on the agenda, Sisters Cities Club trip to Grand Canyon. Information is on 161 through 169. Do I hear a motion?
I move we approve the Sister Cities Club trip to the Grand Canyon.
I second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Discussion. I'll take Jill's turn on this. Thanks to the people who filled out the forms
Yes.
appropriately.
They're very good at it.
Very good.
All right, hearing no more discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. The last one under action items is the updated extracurricular fees for the fiscal year, or calendar year, no, school year 23-24, sorry, in pages 170 to 172.
And if I'm correct, it's only the addition of the fall camp, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Right.
It's just, we wanted to make sure we brought it to the board to make sure you guys were, approve that, take a look at it, but we are doing everything we can to make it as easy as possible for our parents to choose Fountain Hills and be here.
Okay.
Okay.
And do I hear a motion?
I move we approve the extracurricular activities fees.
I second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Yes.
So how did we come up with the dollar amount for the tours?
I believe they took, she explained it to me, it was, there you go.
And then is our staff coming back and working over the break? Will they receive stipends? I'm sure we're taking care of our staff.
Yeah, I believe it's just the people that are working, that do like Club Falcon and those types of things. So we've put a plan in place to make sure there's assistance if needed. But I've verified with Leah that everything that she's done with that camp falls under the rules and regulations of a preschool. So we will, we have a plan in place if there's a situation that arises over there at Low Falcons.
Thank you for thinking outside of the box and
Yeah.
offering this for the kids.
Yep.
Is this going to cover the cost of each student participating? Like, will we be able to, we're not going to lose money on this, right?
Oh, I mean, we'll see. I have to see how many kids show up. But again, you know, when you're trying to get kids to come to your preschool and there's gaps in it, it makes it hard for parents, right? So we're trying to, I think she had some decent interest in it. She's not here tonight to answer that, but again, this is our first year of trying it, so we'll see how it goes and we'll go from there.
Okay, any more discussion? Not, we'll vote. All those in favor of the updated extracurricular fees signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. We don't have any information or discussion items tonight, so we'll talk about future action, which will be coming forward with the budget discussion, our superintendent goals, and our procurement policies. If you've got others, obviously, get a hold of Krista or Dr. J. Dates for upcoming meetings: October 18th is the next regular scheduled meeting, and November 1st is the next meeting after that, and both are at 6 o'clock right here at the Learning Center. And hearing none, all business being finished, I declare the meeting over.
I move we adjourn.
And we don't have to do that.
Don't?
You said we declared it over, we're done.
Not my first rodeo, but it is my last.